Hello everyone, this is lesson 14 of the Year 7 course on Mark's Gospel. This one looks at who is Jesus, and if you asked people who they think Jesus is, you would get lots of different answers. For example, some people think he was a good man. Some people think he was a prophet. Some people think he was a miracle worker, did amazing things. Some people say he's the Son of God. And if you ask people, some would say he's a king. All different ideas. So what does the Bible say about who Jesus is? We're going to look especially at chapter 8, verses 27 to 30 of Mark's Gospel. This is what it says. Jesus went out with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on the road he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" They answered him, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others one of the prophets." That's ideas people thought. You might think it funny they say John the Baptist. Why would they think Jesus was John the Baptist? But remember that John the Baptist and Jesus were cousins. They might have looked a bit the same. John the Baptist had already been executed not long before this. And some people thought John the Baptist had been killed and come alive again. So all different ideas. Then Jesus says, "But you," he asked them, "who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Messiah." And he strictly warned them to tell no one about him. Now, Peter said, "You are the Messiah." And that's what we're going to try to understand in this lesson. The aim of this lesson, the learning intention, is that you can describe the promises in Psalm 2 concerning the Christ and Peter's wrong expectation. Now, hang on, why have I just said Christ when Peter called him Messiah? What's going on here? The first thing we need to do is work out these words. What's Messiah mean here? Or what does Christ mean? Now, I don't know many other languages, but I know that ciao or buongiorno is how you say hello in Italian. And in Japanese, you say something like konnichiwa, and they both mean hello. One is Italian, one is Japanese, one is English, but they all mean the same thing. That's exactly what it's like with Messiah, which is just Hebrew, Christ, which is Greek, and anointed one, which is English. These two words just mean anointed one. And anointed is when you've poured oil on someone. An anointed one is someone who has had oil poured on their head. Have a look at this little video. It makes it easier to see what's going on. I'm going to get out of the way. That was gross, wasn't it? That was someone being anointed. They poured oil on his head. We don't need to see it again. Okay, they poured oil on his head. And pouring oil on his head like that, running down all over him, was a way, a symbol, a sign to show that that person had been chosen to be a king. They'd also do it sometimes for priests, but here we're interested in king. So that anointed person is going to be the king. Christ or Messiah just means the person chosen to be king. Now you need to open up your lesson, your workbook. This is lesson 14, so open up your workbook to lesson 14. You can use the outline, the preview on the side to help you. Find question 1, and you can answer question 1. What does the word Christ mean? Pause and answer that, and then come back to the video. Now, we're going to keep going again. Now we know what Messiah is. Let's keep going. God promised to send a special king or Messiah or Christ. Remember, they all mean the same thing. And he gave lots of prophecies and announcements about what this king would do. Psalm 2 was written about 1,000 years before Jesus lived, and this is what it said. "Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth take their stand, and the rulers conspire together against the Lord and his anointed one. Let's tear off their chains and throw their ropes off us." And question 2 in your workbook says, where does this psalm mention the Christ? Well, where does it? Hopefully you can see there it says anointed one, and that's the same as Christ. So you can answer in your workbook question 2. You can see where it says Christ or anointed one in verse 2. Now, what else does the psalm say? Question 3, it tells us some things about this Christ or anointed one. I'll keep going. "The one enthroned in heaven laughs. The Lord ridicules them. Then he speaks to them in his anger and terrifies them in his wrath. I have installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. That's talking about the anointed one, the Christ. And what does it call him? The king. Let's keep going. Now the king speaks. I will declare the Lord's decree. He said to me, you are my son. Today I have become your father. Oh, what's going on there? The anointed one is called God's son. So the Christ is called the king in verse 6. He's called God's son in verse 7. So you can pause the video and answer question 3 about what this psalm calls the Christ. Now, the psalm also says what the Christ will do. Let's go back to it again. Verse 8 that we're up to, God says to this special king, ask of me and I will make the nations your inheritance and the ends of the earth your possession. You will break them with an iron scepter. You will shatter them like pottery. So you can answer the next question in your workbook. What will he do? It says here he is going to own all the nations or rule over all the nations. So you can pause and answer the next question in your book about what he will do. He will rule over all the nations of the world. Now, it's not only the psalm, there were lots of prophecies that talked about the Christ or the Messiah, or about a special person who would come and rule. Here's one more. Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 and 14 said, suddenly, one like a son of man, a human being, was coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was escorted before him. He was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, so that those of every people, nation, and language should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will not be destroyed. So you can use that to answer the next question, question 5. What does it say about this Son of Man, this person who's going to come? People of every nation will serve him, and his kingdom will not be destroyed. It will last forever. So pause the video and answer question 5. Now, last thing, when Peter said to Jesus, you are the Messiah, what did he think Jesus was going to do? Well, here's a picture of some Roman soldiers, and there were a lot of Roman soldiers in Jerusalem and Israel at the time when Peter lived, and they did not like the Romans ruling over them. So Peter thought Jesus was going to get rid of the Romans. Peter thought the Christ or Messiah would be a military king with an army who would lead an army to fight the Romans and make the nation of Israel independent again. So you can pause and answer question 6. Now let's just review what we've seen. The Christ or Messiah is the one anointed, oil on their head, which means they are chosen to be king. And God promised the Christ or Messiah or anointed one would be his son, king, and would rule the whole world forever. And in Mark 8, Peter realized for the first time that Jesus is the promised Christ or king or Messiah.